with it. I think we're good. I think we're live. Hang on. Let me get my shoes. Hi. Welcome back to Steinbrecht Sessions. This is my Steinbrecht. Okay, so it's if I get lost, it's because this is my second one. And sorry, I was out at the barn and kind of running back in here. We are at the bottom of page 71, the bottom of page 71. I'm not even going to try to find it in here right now. I'm just going to start. He's talking. This is so important, you guys. He's talking about you can't fake the Aufrichtung, the relative elevation of the forehand, because it's in the body of the horse. It's croup to withers, not pole. So there's no way the hand can cause that. The only thing that can cause that is actual literal carrying by the hindquarters. That is the only way that they will carry more than the forehand. They have to actually carry. And that is a decision and a desire in the horse himself. So it can't be manipulated or fiddled. It can be fiddled very temporarily, but someone who is aware of the two golden rules, ride your horse forward and set him straight, will know that in the absence of carrying, you have nothing. The horse is untrained. It's that simple. So he goes through this part that he's talking about you can't do the hands. He talks about the dead legs attached to the hard hands, dead legs, stiff riders, dead legs, hard hands, or busy hands still can't make up for the fact of dead legs, because we need to have the horses must have diligent hindquarters on their own. That means the hindquarters must be stimulated, and that is from an educated leg. P.S. It must say it somewhere in Steinbrecht, but I know it says it in the HDV 12 on page 35 or 39, that the nearer the leg is to the girth, the better it will act on the hindquarters. Now, how do I know that it must say that in here, even though I don't know where? I mean, this is a lot. Okay, it's a lot. The reason I know it must be in here, even though I don't know the page, the chapter and verse, so to speak. Get it? My joke I just made. The reason I know it's in here is because the HDV 12, which is the cavalry manual for the German Army 1912, is directly derived from this manuscript. Then, after World War II, the Vorendorf books were these books, this and Advanced Techniques, and then there's others on driving and stable management and all that. It's a series. The Vorendorf manuals were the way that the directive for creating them was spelled out was basically take the HDV 12 and put it into civilian language. So that's what we have here. But that, of course, is still derived. This is derived from this. This is the Cliff Notes and beginner version, or I think you could even say the most advanced version, because it's so terse and it doesn't explain. It just says, do this, don't do this. Okay, so I'm back to here. And I'm back to the bottom of page 73. And I reviewed what he's gone through, right? Then he says, he's talking about horses in motion. And he's talking that about that a horse, that motion, wait, is it carrying versus, I might be confused. Yeah. Thrust cannot be regulated. So the purpose of the carrying, and why we stimulate the hindquarters are so that the hindquarters will carry, because the carrying governs the thrust. So he says here, he doesn't say it here, but he says it somewhere else, that carrying governs thrust. What he says here is thrust cannot be regulated if none exists. And the horse cannot learn to move correctly if it does not move. So what this carrying regulates thrust, carrying governs thrust. Go back to page 71 and at the end of the fourth paragraph, which is the second paragraph after the italics that say ride your horse forward and set it straight, there's a statement that says, it's the end of the last sentence, but thrust should never be completely suppressed by overdoing it. I want you to have a little asterisk, but thrust should not be completely suppressed by overdoing it. That put in parentheses. It should be, it could be like it's all own topic. Thrust should not be suppressed by overdoing the carrying, the loading. We don't want to put so much load on unprepared hindquarters that the horses can't keenly, happily bounce out of them. Because the reason that we load the thrust, the reason why we suppress the thrust with care, that we don't overly suppress it. We deliberately put it in place with the spring action of the joints. So we take the thrust and we put the spring action of the carrying joints onto that thrust, and that starts to govern the thrust so that the thrust can be expressed any way the rider wants, that it can be expressed at will and in precise ratios, the ratios meaning the ratio of carrying to thrust. So by governing the spring action, the thrust can be expressed on the spot. That would be piaffe or maybe passage advancing slightly. The thrust can, the ratio of carrying to thrust decides the length of the footsteps and the trajectory of the footsteps. Is it a long straight ahead step, a flat out run, or is it an up? So it controls the power, like the RPM, how much thrust per stride. It determines the trajectory. There's one other thing it does. I can't remember. Okay, but carrying regulates thrust. Thrust cannot be governed if none exists, and we do not want to suppress the thrust by overdoing the carrying. Sometimes when a bad trainer gets a feel for being able to rock a horse back, they will exploit it so much that the horse cannot dance out of the engagement, out of the carrying. And so that, and that is very wrong. That is along the lines of thrust should not be suppressed by overdoing it. That is very injurious to the horse. So that is where another rule, it's not as high up on the hierarchy as the two other rules, but the other rule that we were very strict with in our program is that after in every engaging moment, or after or the end, after every engaging moment and after every one-sided engaging situation, we always test the forward out of it. We always dance out of every position we're in. And if the horse doesn't exit more forward uphill keen, or as Amanda likes to say, forward uphill connected keen, because she likes to snicker at the acronym. If the horse doesn't dance out of the position or the exercise more forward uphill keen, then you suppressed the thrust and you took advantage of a horse who was willing to let you use him that way. There's a couple very popular but horrific examples of this, of trainers who have gotten a hold of the horse is saying yes, and then they just keep at it. There is no reason to stay on a diagonal riding half passes and pirouettes for 4 minutes. You just don't need to. There's no reason to. If the horse will make a quarter pirouette, he'll make a half pirouette, and if you make a half pirouette, he'll make a full pirouette. And if you can do that, maybe go around twice just to show how strong he is, but dance out of it. Because if he doesn't dance out of it easily, you held it too long and you're doing it for a camera or a crowd. And this is very awful. And these are the people calling themselves classical. But what the whole point of the collection is, or training the carrying power to regulate the thrust, is so that he can dance out of it, so that he can be more agile and lively and flexible and strong. But if you're going to destroy the soft tissue by overloading the joints, then you're just a fucker. You're just you're worse than a masher on the backside of the racetrack, because you know better, because you have enough skill to load a hindquarter, and then you do that. You know, a little bit tempted to leave it at that. But I want to bring up one other thing. So carrying governs thrust, but thrust cannot be regulated if none exists. And the horse cannot be taught to move correctly if he does not move. So this going is very important. And the way that one student here several years ago, she said it so beautifully. She said that the governing of the thrust by the carrying is more of like a mother and baby situation. The carrying nurtures this thrust and protects this thrust and trains it to be regulated and express itself in these precise ratios without ever harming the thrust or the joints that cause it. Okay. And I want to send you guys back, and any of you who are hearing this discussion without having been through the preparatory lessons that this program operates by, classes 101 through 105, I want to refer you to a very important, is it on this page? I want to refer you to the aim of the rider trainer that everyone in this program starts with, that we rely on, and that we always reference back to us. Like if we have a question about something that's going on, we can always consider the aim, and then we'll know if we're on the right track. And the aim of the rider trainer is, the rider trainer has achieved his aim and fully trained his horse when both forces of the hindquarters, the carrying power and the propulsive force, bound or wed with elasticity, are fully developed, and when he can use and balance the effects of these forces at will and in precise ratios. So that's where we start. That's where we start in our minds when we proceed in the horse training. And that it's a statement worth memorizing. And I want to tell you the page number. I have it memorized, but I don't have the page number. Oh, it's 53. He has accomplished this task and has trained his horse to perfection if he has brought the two forces that are based in the hindquarters, thrust and carrying power, the latter in connection with spring force, the carrying power, to their greatest development, and is able to weigh their effects and their ratio to one another precisely and at will. You will also find this statement on page 19 of Advanced Techniques, which I said a few minutes ago is derived from here, but that is the start place. If the two golden rules, ride your horse forward and set them straight, is our cornerstone, that is our starting place. And the way that those two statements relate to each other is a whole nother interesting topic. But since this series is quite strictly based on pages 71 through 75, I'm not going to go on some big tangent about it. Let me see what comes next. I have to find page 73 again, and they're not in order because my book has fallen apart. Okay, thrust cannot be regulated if none exists, and the horse cannot learn to move correctly if it does not move. Those are fighting words. That's the kind of obvious statement that will get you kicked out of Facebook groups. So be careful with it, but it's so right. You know, the horse can't move. If it's not moving, you can't teach it to move correctly. Okay. I think that he's going to go on more about how the foundation support of the going is the carrying power of the hindquarters. That is the spring. We train the spring and that is what regulates thrust. So do write in your margin, reference back to the aim of the rider trainer. He has trained his horse to perfection, or the rider trainer has achieved his aim and fully trained his horse when both forces of the hindquarters, the carrying power and the propulsive force, bound by elasticity, that's really important, are fully developed, and when he can use and balance the effects of these forces at will and in precise ratios. So we will continue on page 74 next week. I hope I've given you a lot to think about. Oh, it's actually been 17 minutes. I think that's plenty. Ride your horse forward, set it straight.